lacking maybe in my piece is like a good ask, like we talked about. It's a little more abstract for mine, like something tangible. Um, and yeah, I don't know if I need to put more like about my scenario, like the patient scenario. Yeah, I just found myself like getting lost in rabbit holes of trying to find data and like what would be relevant, and then like reading other op-eds, and I was just like down a rabbit hole. And like Mahmoud, like what I had to get out of my head in order to like actually write. Um, right before this meeting, I was like reading it again, and then I added in like to the ask of just vaguely like calling representatives, but I don't know. I don't feel great about it. So yeah, I'm just not sure. Like, I guess I have to think more about like what could be a good audience and then go from there, like depending on, where this is intended to be read, like the ask might be different. And yeah, so maybe just like your advice about that.
Well done. So thanks so much for the reflections on the writing process. And by the way, I did notice some of those data points. The 80% of emergency room visits could have been preventive care. The 1/3 of the homelessness in the emergency rooms, those stood out, right? Those were really powerful points to make. There may be others to make as well. Also, on the issue of what you want to get out of today's session, I think you basically said it. You want to go over your piece. Was there anything
Yeah,
else
and
that I
like
missed
just
there?
like get feedback about the ask and like because that's like what you said could really be an impactful op-ed is like
Yeah,
what do people get out of it? What could they do? And
yeah,
I'm not sure really I have the best one that I could.
yeah. Well, similarly to the concept that we shared with Mahmoud a moment ago about Marcus Aurelius saying that we always suffer so much more in imagination than in reality. Similarly to that, we know that all the great writers agonize over what it is that they've written, and it's usually a hallmark of progress and an impactful piece for that author to always agonize over not having done it well enough, right? When someone sort of spikes the football and says this piece is ready to go and it's on, that's typically when the red flags come up. Well, wait just a second here. Let's check that out. And most importantly, it also signals that progress might be difficult to make because one's already so wedded to what they've already put down. So, with that, let's dive into the pieces themselves. And let's also have a little refresher on what kinds of things we want to see in an op-ed in a general structure. First of all, whose piece do we want to examine first? Preferences?
Don't matter.
No
I
worries. Okay,
volunteer.
gotcha.
There you go.
We'll go with Hannah's. Fantastic. Now, also, let's recap. Let's talk just a little bit before we dive into Hannah's. And by the way, both of you are comfortable going over, direct passages and so forth. There's no one needs any ego protection here. Wonderful.
Mhm.
So now we talked about it in last session. What's a classic structure for an op-ed? A classic structure is really important for us to have and to be able to have as a foundation. After which, of course, if we're comfortable, we can deviate from this in some respects. But being aware of a basic structure that we know works, it's sort of like in medicine, right? Before we can be cutting edge or innovative, obviously we have to be really well rooted in what 100 or 200 years of medical science tells us we actually have to do. It's similar to that in terms of our writing programs, our writing structures and strategies. Now, with that op-ed, the first sentence is always the most important. That's the lead, L-E-D-E, and sometimes that lead even contains the hook. But that lead has got to be good. Doesn't always have to be. Now, that lead can take many forms. It can be the provocative question. It can be the incredible statistic. It can be the jaw-dropping moment. It can be the searing visual of something that we are shattered by or inspired by. It can be so much more. Of course, following this, we have to get into not only what we're going to be telling our reader, but also what our overarching point is, our thesis. So we want to get both of those going soon after the lead. What's this really going to be about? and what's my thesis about it, right? The old adage is tell them what you're going to talk about it for a little while, and then tell them what you talked about again, right? We got to do that. And by the way, I want to give you both particular props on brevity. Both of these pieces came in at, 400 or 500 words. That's nice to work with. It's often easier to build up than to cull down. A lot of the most difficult or least impactful pieces that I've seen that I've had to work with, or at least the most laborious ones to work with, are the ones that started off at 1,500 words or 1,200 words. Thankfully, we didn't have that problem here. Now, we need those body paragraphs to flesh out the problem. Now, we flesh it out both with rhetoric and also often with data. We can also use visuals as well. Ideally, we're using a combination of all three. In particular, when we're talking about something like this, making a case for public health, often a case for public health that's not made conventionally, we need data points in order to convince our reader this is really a thing. Of course, we also need to provide solutions. What's the way forward? And then the key, that call to action, what we need to do. And oftentimes, we bring that back to the lead at the end. We remind them how this happened, how this came to be. That's the bow on top of that package that we've made, starting with that perfect lead, that lead that was so gripping. We revisit that at the end. That's that full circle moment. Let's go into Hannah's piece. And she titled it, Addressing the Housing Crisis Improves Public Health for All. Now, the best way to do this, why don't we bring up your initial draft, Hannah? Can you share that to the screen?
Yes.
Thank you.
Let me see if I can zoom in.
That's pretty good. That's readable.
Okay.
At least it is for me.
There. Was that better? Did that zoom anything in?
Yeah, it did. And it's very good. Thank you. So let's start right there. It's perfect where it is. Got the first two paragraphs wide open. Now, just a big picture thing. In these kinds of pieces, these persuasive pieces, public consumption communication, it's a lot different than obviously the papers that you write for your professors and so forth, and academic writing. These probably look like small and manageable paragraphs in that context, yet these are lengthy blocks of text in a public communication thing. So these, I would not regard the text I'm looking at as 2 paragraphs, although it looks like it here. This is something, almost every sentence becomes a paragraph. Some at most, we're talking about 3-sentence paragraphs typically in an op-ed piece. So let's look at that very first line. In the hectic emergency room, I encountered a patient whose ailments told a silent fate of life on the unforgiving streets. A silent tale of life, I'm sorry. So that's excellent. I like that a lot, right? And I'm not going to deviate much from that in the edit that I have. But what I wonder is, when you hear that, when you see that, how does that strike you? Hannah, looking at this on reflection with new eyes, because it's always new eyes when you revisit what you've written whenever that was. It's always so helpful to turn off the computer and come back to it later. What are you seeing now with your eyes today?
I was wondering, like, should I be like describing the appearance or like a little more specific, like not warm clothes, holes in the clothes, or cold, like, I don't want to say dirty, but like just being outside and like that, how that affects.
So adjectives and adverbs are our friends, but they tend to be widely overused. And we want to be careful and sparing in their use. Verbs, those action words, those are often our best. And we also really like nouns, right? Things that are really clear, really vivid. Words like hectic, for instance. Hectic give me a feeling. It can be that could be a good one, but it doesn't give me a visual. So I like hectic a little, but it's a little on the vague side, right? The unforgiving one, that's in particular, that's one that kind of sticks out as, it's obviously vague. It has a normative aspect to it. What's an unforgiving street? Oftentimes if you ask yourself to define what you've said and you have a struggle in how to do that, that could be a signal that you want to use more concrete language.
Mm-hmm.
So here in one sentence, we have hectic, silent tale of life, unforgiving streets. That's a lot, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, you already put your finger on it when you said, I wondered if I should have something more vivid, right? I see warm blanket. I see hot food. Those are pretty good, right? There could have been more, right? Now the key is that the trick is, right? You can't get too overloaded and stuff and bore people. You got to sprinkle these things in really sparingly.
Mm.
Right? Maybe that this, if you give me something about the patient, right? And I understand there's HIPAA things involved here. We can't provide too much detail, but if there was something like, let's say his stooped gait,
Mm-hmm.
or nearly toothless mouth,
Mm-hmm.
or shaggy hair, right? Those are kinds of things to think about. I
Yeah.
can't purport to put those in. I didn't see it myself, but make us see something, right? Now, what I would say on hectic is, let me just say that. What does hectic mean to you?
I
In
guess
this
I was trying to say, like, as you see later in the piece, that the emergency room is so busy and like can feel overwhelming, but a lot of the patients who are there, you're dealing with like non-urgent things. Like I picked a case that you know is a patient who's unhoused who is seeking care in the emergency room for a non-emergent life-threatening thing, or like so that's why I picked like, oh, I just prescribed him antibiotics and he was fine. um Not like somebody who's coming in with a heart attack needed to be admitted, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, very much so. So this is what we call an anecdotal lead, and you're telling me an anecdote. You're giving me a story
Mm-hmm.
that makes me believe in something. And by the way, the story is always the best way to go, right? At least you have to have an element of story in your piece. Why? Well, as humans, of course, we use data and we need data, but data is not what really tickles our amygdala or what really gets our hearts involved. When early humans communicated with one another, they weren't counting things and providing data to one another. They were writing stories on cave walls, right? And they were telling stories.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we need to do here. So another way to go about that could be something like, rather than hectic, maybe crowded, right? Maybe chaotic.
Mm-hmm.
Those two little words can give me something a little more concrete, right?
Mm-hmm.
We could say something like, as I shouldered through, the crowd of people cramming our emergency room waiting lobby area, something like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how about this? As a physician in a crowded, chaotic emergency room, I recently treated a patient whose ailments told his silent tale of life on the streets.
Mm.
Now, one key thing is the unforgiving part, right? Unforgiving really, there were other reasons about it that were a little off, but mostly it's really about being redundant, right? Unnecessary.
Yeah.
If I say life on the street, I don't need to say unforgiving because I know that, right? I know the streets are rough.
Yeah.
Life on the street, that tells me something much better. The haggard middle-aged man. Now, that's a liberty. I have no idea what that is. Could this person have been described as haggard middle-aged man?
Yes.
Okay, so there's one, right? The haggard middle-aged. Now, it would be nice to have like one detail in there, right? Let's say he was wearing one shoe. That would be beautiful, right? He shuffled in with only one shoe on his right foot, right? That would be nice. Something like that. The haggard middle-aged man needed immediate treatment for pneumonia. A host of secondary conditions impaired his overall health. I treated the pneumonia and I provided him with that warm blanket and the hot food. But sadly, I knew my intervention was ultimately futile. While effective and costly in a hospital setting, my intervention would only be a temporary reprieve. What? That's the big shocker. Whoa, wait, what? The futility? How is that futile? The connection between homelessness and our general public health is inseparable. That's the big point. When the unhoused flood our emergency rooms in desperate need, it strains our systems to treat the conditions that should be much more effectively and cheaply treated long before a hospital visit is even necessary. Those without shelter face the disproportionate burden of chronic and physical mental illness, made only worse by their dire circumstances. Due to a variety of factors within our broken healthcare system, emergency rooms have become a reluctant refuge for the unhoused. And this costly cycle strains healthcare resources for all of us. Bring us all together. Then show me the data. Nearly 1/3 of emergency room visits are made by people struggling with homelessness. 80% of those emergency visits are for an illness that could have been treated with preventative care. And I would recommend, those are 2 data points. I saw 2 data points in this piece, and they were good. I'd recommend more. I'd recommend 1 or 2 more that have a dollar amount to it, right?
Okay.
Find it. This should be really easy to find.
Yeah.
Just Google, and there's all kinds of nonprofits out there that crunch this data, and somebody will give you a massive number for what this costs our emergency rooms. Now bring it back to you. I see firsthand emergency rooms clogged with the casualties of this dire inequity. Increasing costs, wait times, and ultimately this results in unnecessary suffering and even death. On this night, I felt hopeless discharging the man with pneumonia back into the streets. I knew he would likely return, as he had numerous times before. Living in the harsh conditions on the street, and that's my maybe I redundant myself there, right? Take the harsh conditions out. Living on the streets exacerbates his vulnerabilities, forcing him to seek medical care on a near monthly basis in the form of emergency room visits. And then we go with the solving homelessness isn't just a moral imperative. It's a prescription for community well-being. By providing stable housing, we improve their lives, and we trigger a powerful domino effect that redirects emergency services to where they're truly needed. Addressing housing isn't a charity, it's an investment in collective health. When resources previously consumed by emergency interventions find new purpose in preventative care, healthier communities can thrive. Now bring it back to the personal expertise authoritative. As a family medicine resident, I've witnessed firsthand the need for change. and then go into the call for change, right? You call your representatives, urge them to advocate. And I would add a line to this one. Find some other ways that people are saying, advocates in this space are saying we can do better.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, I took liberties and I said, I tried to wrap it up differently for you. I said, it's just an idea. You know, I'm going to send you both your drafts.
Mm-hmm.
Mahatma Gandhi once said that the true measure of any society is found in how it treats its most vulnerable. I agree with that. I'm taking liberties. I'm talking for you. But I'd add that a truly healthy society recognizes the imperative of investing in the health and wellness of all people, not just those who can afford shelter. That's a way to wrap it, right?
Mm-hmm.
You could also go back to that day with that man.
Mm-hmm.
If you have something else about that exchange, you know, maybe he said thank you and maybe you said you're welcome, but as he left, it gnawed at you that you felt that you were just perpetuating a cycle or something.
Mm-hmm.
That could be a way to end it as well. Anytime you want to tell me that you want to go back to the anecdote to make a point again at the very end of the story, I'm never going to argue with that. That's an effective approach.
Mm-hmm. Thank
Okay.
you. Really helpful.
We're running out of time. I apologize. Mahmoud, let's go. You ready? Please bring up yours, Mahmoud. Guys, can you indulge me with 10 more minutes, or is it too much? Thank you. Okay, great. Walking down the street with my 3 little children, we encounter mattresses and cardboard boxes blocking the path on our way to the park. I like that, right? Very good. I'd say encounter is not the strongest verb.
Uh-huh.
We might work with something else, but imagine this. Walking down the street with my 3 small children on an otherwise beautiful fall day, we were confronted with a pile of cardboard boxes and mattresses. My eldest child stopped and said, and I love this, right? What my child said to me, this is a beautiful anecdote, right? This is the kind of story you tell to somebody if you want them to really believe, right? My eldest child stopped and said, Dad, can we just go home? This place is dirty. That's it, right? That tells you everything right there. Now, next line. As a family doctor in this community, seeing such hazardous waste in our public spaces is all too common. Illegal dumping of hazardous waste. Now, we've done the anecdote. We've shown the perspective here. Now it's time for hitting it with the big thesis here that we might not be expecting. We just saw a child plead to his daddy how terrible this looks. That's powerful. Now take me somewhere with that energy. And here it is. Illegal dumping and hazardous waste isn't just an ongoing aesthetic and environmental disaster. It's a threat to public health. Whoa, right? Now you got me. It is? How? Waste dumping in our streets and parks is a powerful deterrent, particularly in low-income communities, to the most important activity for all public health. Wait for it, exercise, right? Our youth deserve better, and so does our community. The saying says that you are what you eat, but in this case, our health is also a product of our community environment. Roughly 1/3 of all youth in West County are clinically obese. Now, Mahmoud, you didn't have any data points that I saw here, right?
Right. I was looking for some.
I understand it's okay. It might be difficult to do it. So I threw one in for you. Now, the 1/3 of all youth in West County, I feel like I remember this, but I don't know for sure. So vet me, please.
Confirm it. Yeah.
But I'm pretty sure that it's around, if it's not exactly that, it's very close. Roughly 1/3 of all, but we need the data points to the point, right? And I know that data points are going to be harder for you to get than Hannah, just by the nature of your topic and the novelty of your argument, but you can come up with some stuff. 1/3 of all youth in West County are clinically obese, but the link between rampant dumping in parks and other public spaces and our public health crisis isn't clear to many. Now, what this is this is an example of acknowledging the other side. It's a really subtle one. Like, you don't have a direct person who's out there saying that what you're saying is not true. You don't have a boogeyman to knock down, but you are acknowledging that, like, well, people don't really get it. And so you're not saying they're stupid. You're just saying it's not clear to them, but I'm being helpful in making it clear as a physician.
Yeah.
This is why the New York Times, by the way, in all their best guest op-eds, what they really, really love is a subject expert to weigh in on a topic, right? Like, they have expert columnists that write great columns, right? They're the best in the world. But what they don't have is subject experts who could come in. That's what the guest op-ed is. That's why you guys are so powerful. Physicians with pens. I love it.
I'm quite amazed.
Can you imagine? Now, here's the imagine part. Can you, after that it's not clear to many, can you imagine how many other youths in the community have reactions similar to that of my eldest child? I love that. Right? You have this powerful anecdote, and you're going to tell us. We already know it intuitively, but you could tell us again. I'm not the only dad and the only child that's had this terrible situation. How many other children have pleaded with their parents? Can you imagine how many? Have you ever wondered why youth in underserved communities grow to be overweight at such a disproportionate rate? It's time. It's time. This is a signal call. It's time for us to understand that the illegal dumping and waste that plagues our community is a threat to public health. And it's in the same category as food insecurity, access to nutritious foods, education, income disparity, and physical activity opportunities. This is part of the basket of health. This is part of the basket of threats to health. Our youth is the future, right? As you say. Let us value the development and build bridges to health and happiness. Let us work on the little things to build a community for tomorrow. What can we do? Question mark. On an individual level, we should all make a habit of picking up trash every chance we get. We should encourage our neighbors. We should do the same and properly dispose of waste. We must report illegal dumping immediately to the proper local authorities. We cannot accept illegal dumping. We can't accept this behavior and normalize it. Tell your local officials that illegal dumping is a threat to the health of our community. Start talking about dumping as threats to children's health. Our youth, why is all this important? Our youth deserve public spaces to walk safely and play. The money that we can spend on prevention of illegal dumping the money spent on prevention of pediatric obesity, right, isn't enough. Spending money on the reduction of illegal dumping in our community will pay dividends in increasing activity, use of public spaces, and ultimately reducing pediatric obesity and improving the health of all in our communities, especially our children. Let's all unite for a better cause. We can all agree that all children deserve access to safe and clean public spaces, right?
Is this coming like naturally to you, or you already have this written?
Well, so thank you for asking. I did jot some stuff down. I have notes here that I'm going to clean up a little bit, but okay. I'm so inspired by yours. I got on a little bit of a roll there. Thank you, Mahmoud.
Thank you.
So, and I'm guilty of getting carried away sometimes, but I really, it helps that I believe in what you're both saying, right? That's always, we can fake passions as professional writers, but, it's never as good as the real thing, the real juice. So what I would say is both of you have really made great first drafts. I think that only relatively minor work on them can really make them better. I encourage you both to think of this as the where your pieces, whether it's fiction writing or academic writing or in this case public influence writing, all of it, it can always benefit from more and more scrutiny and polishing. So go back to this, make some revisions today, try to make some revisions tomorrow. But you have good clay to work with. Just keep on chipping it away at it a little bit. And by the time you turn it in, I think it's going to be a really beautiful sculpture.
Thank you so much. This was really helpful.
Appreciate it.
My pleasure. Now I'd like to send you guys a document. Would you mind if I sent a Word document? I'm going to have some tips at the top that can apply to both, and it's going to have both of your drafts in it. Would you mind sharing that? Is that okay?
Of course. Don't
Okay.
mind.
Wonderful. Well, I will send that to you guys this afternoon. In fact, within minutes. And I'm really impressed and really appreciative of being able to work with you and see where you're going on this and to be helpful in a small way.
Now I want to be a journalist. Keep in mind,
Well, there's room for you down the road after you get done with your important work now.
I would say that when I was in high school, I did attend Media Academy, which focused on newspaper and magazine publishing, and I did that for a few years. I don't like writing, but I was in that small school when I was in high school, and we did a lot of writing and editing and design and stuff like that. But yeah, I do admire you guys' work. It plays a huge role in our community for sure.
Well, thank you so much, Babu. That's very kind of you to say. And not to belabor the point, but I feel likewise about the incredible work that you guys do in our community. Thanks for being a partner.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, well, I'll send you the email now, and also I'll also attach the invitation for tonight's party. No pressure, but if you swing through, that'd be wild.
Awesome.
Hey,
Have
Hannah,
a great day.
yeah, take care of yourself.
Thank you.
Mahmoud, do you want me to send you another? We're meeting
Yeah.
here, so I'll send you another link.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.